All right. This is Roberto Lorenzo Ferguson. What's up, everybody? How you doing? Do me a favor and let me know where you're at. If you're catching me live or even a replay, just type in, "Hey, I'm from I don't know, Oregon." Put in your state, Michigan. Like, where are you coming from? Where are you getting this information from? Because I want to share with you something that I know most of you don't know, and if you know the answer, I can't wait for you to share with me that you know the answer, because this is one of those food as medicine things that people just don't know. But as always, I'm that guy that wants to share information with you because I care. And that's why I share. So let's go ahead and bring the music to a halt. Let's stop that music. Stop that music. Stop that music. What's up, everybody? Now, before I get into it, I just want to let you know that everything that I'm sharing today is brought to you by our Detox Drop. I want to encourage you to go learn more about it. It's a great way to jumpstart your fat loss, jumpstart your fitness, jumpstart your better health. It's 7 days long. You can learn more about it by just going to our store. You can go to dietfreelife.com or go to the links that are provided. And the link that we have provided here is one that touches on our upcoming virtual conference, course, and certification called Food as Medicine. And you know what? I'm going to share with you the difference between a yam and a potato. And I just noticed that as I look at the picture, I misspelled difference. Okay. So don't hold that against me. All right. Because we're going to dive right into it. I really want you guys to have a thorough understanding of what is the difference, because in knowing the difference, there's some opportunities that are being missed. Seriously, there's some huge opportunities that are being missed when it comes to the difference between a yam and a sweet potato. So as we dive into that, and before I get into it deep, again, quick reminder: sign up for the virtual conference course certification. Whether you can be there live or you decide you want to do the replay, which we have on demand, there's so much we're going to cover inside of a day and a half. It's like going to a conference to learn how to optimize your health. You know, people go to a conference to learn how to be better at their job, to learn what is out there to improve their position with their job, to do all the things that's helping somebody else. And very rarely do we go to a conference to learn how to make the most of our own personal well-being and our personal health. As a guy who coaches people, I can tell you right now, very rarely do I sit down or meet with a client who is fully aware of what I know would benefit them if they were aware. And the difference between a sweet potato and a yam, both are great, by the way, but there is a difference. So, but I want to get some interaction here. Who knows? Like, let me know if you're catching me live. And there's people catching me live on LinkedIn. Some of you are catching me on YouTube. Some of you are on Facebook. Some of you are in our groups. Yes or no? Do you know the difference between a yam and a sweet potato? People buy them all the time. But do you know the difference between a yam and a sweet potato? And before I explain the difference, I'm just going to kind of just ramble and talk until someone attempts to explain the difference between a yam and a sweet potato. So I'm going to have fun. Let's change the background. I'm going to go with a little darker color. Because I'm not going to bring up my sign, because in my sign, I misspelled difference. So that's not good. But I'll correct it. So if you're catching a replay, you're like, what is he talking about? Well, anyway, there's two F's in the word difference. But do me a favor and take a shot. Somebody take a shot. Just say yes or no. Do you know the difference between a yam and a sweet potato? Because most people don't. And there's 3 lessons I want you to get out of this. And then I'm going to give you like a take home. Now, before I give you the answer to the difference between a yam and a sweet potato, I have another question that's in my head. So I'm going to pose the question and then I'm going to quickly tell you what the answer is. Right? Because there's So many people in the United States and around the world that are becoming pre-diabetic and diabetic. In the United States, we have over 30 million people living with type 2 diabetes. It's getting close to about 100 million people who are pre-diabetic, which means they're destined to more likely to be a type 2 diabetic. If you're under the age of, let's say, 65 and you have high blood pressure, 2 of 3 people with high blood pressure, if they live long enough, will have type 2 diabetes. So this is a growing concern, and it's been a growing concern since I've been in the space or in the industry of helping people optimize their overall health. It is a real concern, and it shows up like overnight. And there's many of you who are living with type 2 diabetes, and eventually, if you don't begin reversing it or improving it, you're going to start to see things show up. Eyesight's going to start to go. You're going to start to lose feeling in your fingers and your toes. And the list goes on and on with all these things that come up. So a lot of people keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off instead of dealing with it. And then you start counting on drugs, and the drugs are not going to go to the cause. You'll just find yourself in a situation where it's getting worse and worse and worse. And then you stop eating potatoes and you stop eating pasta where you don't have to do that. Many of our clients, we have eating all of these things. But when you learn how to eat foods in the right proportion, combined correctly with other foods, which is a very easy thing to learn, then you find a way to create the habits and get that consistency. Next thing you know, you're starting to like move away from being a type 2 diabetic. You move into remission, and many people move into full reversal, where there's no signs of them ever being a type 2 diabetic. It's mind-blowing. So one of my questions I want to ask and I want to share, because very rarely do we look at the cause, right? Or follow the money. So when I ask the question to people, if I'm talking to a big audience, I'll say, let's talk about type 2 diabetes for a second. And I would ask this question: what nation or country has the least prevalence? So people are less likely to ever experience diabetes. What country do you think that is? And you'll get a whole bunch of answers all over the place, right? And the answer is African nations like Benin and the Gambia. That is the lowest prevalence of diabetes in the world. And they eat rice, they eat tubers, potatoes all the time. So why is it that no one, and they're eating carbs, are getting diabetes? Like so low there. Then if I ask you the question, what country, nation is the most likely to have the higher number of people with type 2 diabetes? Well, as of 2021, number one place where most people are going to become a diabetic, you're talking over 30% of the population. In America, we're about 10% of the population and growing. Pakistan, number one. Number two, French Polynesia. Number three, Kuwait. What? Why is it that so many people in the Middle East are becoming diabetic? Well, when you look at the people who are more likely to be obese, it's not America. That gives you a sign right there, because when it comes to women, America is number 20th. We're like number 20. We're not number one. When it comes to men, we're like 30th. Think about that. And you look around America and we see the challenge we have with obesity and diabetes. Other countries are worse. And why is that? And it continues to increase each and every year. I believe a big part of it is the lack of clarity around food, the lack of knowledge when it comes to food, because we have options. We have an abundance to choose from. but we're choosing from a blind eye. We don't even know what we're choosing. We're just choosing, having no idea. It's like when I asked the question, do you know the difference between a yam and a sweet potato? Most people have no clue. They just stare at me. So then I tell them. So here's what I want you to know, and I'll get out of here. A real, legit yam is something that you would get from Africa. What you get in grocery stores in North America, Canada, United States, they may label it a yam, but it's a sweet potato because there's various types of sweet potatoes. So then you're like, okay, well, I'm going to call it a yam. And what's the, I mean, does it really matter? Well, it actually could matter. If you were wearing a glucose monitor where everything that you ate, you could see the glucose, the sugar response in your blood to the foods you eat, you would notice that when you eat a sweet potato, your glucose response is much higher compared to when you eat a yam. So a yam is better for your blood sugar than if you ate a sweet potato. So remember what I just said. The lower or least prevalence for people becoming a diabetic is taking place in Africa. And I'm talking about African yams. They're eating African yams. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. You got to hear my words because I don't have a image to show you. And I'll do this again in the Food is Medicine. I have images that when you guys are in the course or in the conference, I'll show you images. But if you took 150 grams of sweet potatoes next to 150 grams of yam, this is what you would see. You'll get 26 grams of carbs in a yam, and you would get about 40 grams of carbs in a sweet potato. Actually, sorry, I said that wrong. In a sweet potato, you would get 26 grams, and in a yam, you would get 41 grams. So you get more total carbs in a yam than you get less carbs in a sweet potato. So at first glance, a person would go, well, I'm going to go with the one with the least amount of carbs. So the sweet potato only has 26 grams of carbs. In the same amount, the same serving, you're going to get 41 grams of carbs in a yam. Most people would say, I'm going to go for the yam. But when you look at the sugar response, you get less sugar response when you eat the yam compared to the sweet potato. Then your question would be, why is that? It's because the yam, the African yam, has a little bit more dietary fiber and has less sugar in it, even though there's more total carbs in the sweet potato, you get less sugar with the yam. That is fascinating. Now, depending on where you live, there are stores in a lot of communities where they bring in international foods. So you could go to like a place like you see this with Asian shops, and you have like there's areas where there's international foods, and you can go and enjoy a real African yam. You are going to get the same taste, the same enjoyment, but you're going to get better benefit from eating an African yam to eating what we think is a yam in the United States or a sweet potato. Now, all of them are great. And as I've shared before, and I'll end on this note, if you want to get more out of the yam, the sweet potato, the white potato, the russet potato, the red potato, what you do is you cook it first, let it cool, and then when it's time to eat it, you reheat it before you eat it. That increases what they call resistant starch in it, which means it's going to cut back on the glucose response. And you're going to get way more benefit as far as your gut health because you cooked it, you cooled it, and then you reheated it before you eat it. Just by doing that, you make a significant difference on how that food impacts you. There's technique to optimizing the foods we have access to. This is a prime example of food as medicine. When medicine is a benefit, a positive. You have food. Now share with me how to cook it. What is the syntax of what I do before I eat it that is going to help me get the maximum benefit from it? I hope that helped. I hope that made sense. Maybe it opened up your eyes to look at other foods that are out there, because it does matter. It does matter. I'm Robert Ferguson. I share because I care. Until the next one, hopefully this was information that will benefit you not only now, but for the rest of your life. Because when you know, you know. You know what I mean? And when you don't, you better ask somebody. Until the next one, I'm Robert Ferguson. Peace.